Let's take a look at a few things here. In 4 minutes, we'll start today's live stream. We'll be up and running in 4 minutes. We'll start today's live stream in a moment. Yes, yes, it's going to be a theme song. The name is different, but it's going to be a theme song. What I think if I explain what happens, you'll understand very quickly because it's what happens in everyone's home. We already practice this quite a lot. This is a simple topic to understand. Simple as can be. And we'll begin shortly. Just 2 minutes to get started. After we've talked about a few things, we start by showing the processes of how it happens. Then it becomes very simple for you, for me to understand, to see the mechanism. We see the mechanism of how things work. And by seeing this mechanism, everything becomes easier, everything becomes more peaceful. That's what we're going to try to see today, to look at another mechanism of how some things work. Just a minute. Okay, it's 8 p.m. We're in Sao Paulo. Today is January 21st, 2026. The title of today's live stream is Divaka, 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 Learning and Teaching in a Collective Self, okay? Divaka, Divaka is a name. What is Divaka, right? I've told you a few times, but I'll repeat it. Divaka is a pronoun, okay? We have I, you, he, and then there's a Divaka for this people, which is the Aymara people. Aymara is an Andean people. They live in northern Chile, Bolivia, northern Chile, passing through Peru a little bit. The people are in that region, but this people is Andean. This people uses it as a pronoun. Personal, singular, collective, and we're going to use the term divasa in an aspect of collectivity, when you cease to be an I and become a collective. And in this idea, we're going to see the mechanism today. Today, a part of it, perhaps next Wednesday, something more specific about it. So, learning and teaching in a collective self, where you cease to be I and become a whole together with some people who are in the same attitude, in the same task, in the same doing, a synchronicity where everyone is together. And that's today's live stream. So let's see. And another thing, I'm going to try to draw on things you already know. So what are we going to try to do? Things we've already practiced. Something simple, something that's already part of our routine, something really simple. And in these routines, we'll see how this learning and teaching happens collectively, and perhaps some small applications for the classroom, but that's not our intention. Our intention is simply to show how, when you enter a collective, you learn and teach along with it. Okay, let's go. The first thing I'm going to talk to you about is a host. What is a host? You've often been a host to other people. You've often been welcomed by a host, a hostess. You'll arrive at someone's house, and that person will open their home to you. And it will offer you some things. Sometimes it offers food, drinks, sometimes there's music, sometimes there are some rules, some guidelines on how to behave in that room, in that place. So the host opens it up, he sets the rules, okay? Let's think about you, about me in a very simple way. You having a mind, and that mind being what you perceive yourself to be. This mind comes from somewhere beyond, outside the body? No, our line of thinking. This mind is a processing of our own perception, which is your movement in space, and interoception, which is all the bodily, visceral signaling, the signaling of your body's homeostasis, okay? But Jacques, I made an extension of that very exception and an extension of that interexception. I increased it. So look, sometimes you're riding a bicycle and you feel that it's a bicycle. You feel the impact of the bicycle or the car on yourself. At that moment, what happened? Your own exception extended to that which you control. Good. Sometimes it also occurs through interoception itself. Interoception involves visceral signaling, but the viscera send axons to the brain without myelin, so even your customs, beliefs, ideas, and thoughts can sometimes interpretation, the semantics of words, it can get in the way of the viscera in the brain. It can strain an organ. Depending on the news you receive, it already gives you chest pain. What is that? This news, this belief you have that gives you chest pain, this thing is messing with interoception, and I call it extended interoception. I call extended interoception tech aura, and I call extended interoception itself apos, okay? Back to the host. You are the host. You are the hostess. Someone is arriving at your house. The house is spotless. The house is spotless. And then you put on some music. The house is clean. The person enters the room. When they enter, that volume of the room, that volume is that perception of things within that volume. When your visitor arrives, that visitor looks and already feels that volume. The visitor's body is there, their little body is here, and they will position themselves within the volume they perceive. Then they will have awareness. Awareness is the positioning within the volume they are perceiving. Okay, but that's proprioception. Okay, but then you offer that person water, you offer juice, some food. That's when you're working on that person's interoception. You offer the bathroom door. Look, you want to go to the bathroom, you want to relax, you want to get ready, you offer it, you give comfort, you give security to that person. So you act both in tech OA, which is extended interoception with food, with norms and rules, with what will be lacking, that's tech aura. Yes, but this person in this environment that they perceive, they position themselves, that's apos. So we are making the apos and the tech aura occur. And this person, they are well. Even that, I've explained this to you several times already. This is really cool. This is very simple. You probably already knew this, maybe not applied in your home. So in your home, when you receive someone, you're going to interact with two aspects of that person. The first is the external environment, the room, the decor, the cleanliness, a little music, the atmosphere, the smell. Smell always changes things, a pleasant smell. And then there's the internal environment for that person, the water, the drinks, the food, their beliefs and values, how things behave this way here, that way there. Sometimes a crucifix, sometimes a small religious image, sometimes something showing your religiosity. All of this affects the individual's interoception, and how they position themselves in relation to what you perceive affects their own perceptions. So an individual's consciousness changes according to the environment they are in. Why? Because within that individual, within myself, when I go into an environment, my attentional self will change, my breathing changes, and my way of behaving from environment to environment changes because the tensional self changes and molds itself to the environment. That's all. Is that today's topic? No, but it's fundamental. What we're talking about is Jiwasa, learning and teaching within a collective self. We're not going to learn to teach in this solitary self, in a self that will be synchronized with other people. And it's in this synchronicity that we're going to work today. I have the example of the host because it's fantastic. Have you ever been out and about? Have you ever received a visitor? At some point you were a visitor, you were welcomed. Then you felt that the pleasure that person put in, the comfort you felt, whether you were well, whether you were protected. And then I talk a lot about politics, the great politics. The soul of politics is it's cellular. It's a living thing. You have a cell, and politics will preserve that cell, protect that cell, nourish that cell. This cell has the right and freedom to express itself. Cell we're talking about. If I take you in and welcome you with good politics into my home, I have an environment, some norms and rules, and I will protect you, defend you, feed you, and you will express yourself. Politics, that's what politics is. It protects the individual, defends the individual, feeds the individual, and the individual expresses themselves. By expressing themselves, the system itself receives a return. Politics and religiosity. Religiosity is the way this individual interacts with the environment, how they perceive themselves. In its interoception, in its beliefs, values and faith, all right, customs, traditions and habits, that's what I'm talking about, but also food, you understand? All of that. Tikioa is extended interoception. So this religious process is this communication between interoception, the tikioa, and the apos, how you position yourself in the environment. These two things communicate with each other. This is religare, this is religiosity, this is fundamental. Yes, but this still doesn't reach Jiwasa. And then I'll tell you about religiosity itself, which is this consciousness itself, that consciousness will be based on this connection you've made, this movement you're having in your body, and you have the perception of being in this place with these different beliefs and values, with this interoception and proprioception, or consciousness. One, positioning oneself within the environment in which I perceive myself to be. It could be dreaming, you perceive yourself to be dreaming and you position yourself. And then there is consciousness. And these are three things I really enjoy working with: neuroscience, politics, and religion. I really like working with them, and I'm sharing this idea with you. But now let's introduce Jivaso. Jivaso is something different, right? You have a self, which is you. You entered the environment and you adapted. But when other people start coming in too, and these other people are synchronized in doing something, at some point in that synchronicity, there's something that's, we're together. That's really cool. We're together. The TMJ, we're together. Because this synchronicity, when doing something, is the same. So something happens in this synchronicity, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the mechanism for you. In the next live stream, I'm going to delve basically into breathing and how this mechanism works with breathing. Today, I'm just going to touch on it a little bit, and this mechanism has to do with the activation of the parasympathetic and sympathetic systems. Oh, autonomic system, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Oh, interception. Hey, how's that? And it's not difficult, okay? It's not difficult, and we're basically going to talk about. Now, there's a tag, it's RMSSD. When the heart beats, the larger peak of the heart comes out. It gives a peak, it gives a little kick. Then it does this, peak again, does this, peak again. What I want to talk about is just the little peak, the R. It's the QRS complex. It's the R that I'm going to talk about. Or the ventricle contracts. It gives a pulse like this, the little R. When this R stops, there's a little distance between the R and the R from the ventricle contracting and then the ventricle contracting again. But then it happens that it repeats again, and sometimes the space between them decreases, and sometimes the space between them increases. When does it decrease? When does it increase? It depends on the task, it depends on how it's being done. And how do I know if the spaces between them are increasing and decreasing significantly and when it becomes fixed? When the R value becomes fixed, the heart rate is fixed, but the heart rate variability is low. I call this low RF power, which is very low variability. It's a sign that you're already stable in something, in a strong area of expertise. If I'm here as an individual, alone, without the community, without the group, and suddenly I'm calm, relaxed, my RR, ventricular contraction to another ventricular contraction, varies. It's like this, it's like this, it's like this again, it's like this, it keeps varying. It's really cool. We keep varying. This variability shows that you're doing well, that you're creative, you're doing well. Of course, you're not that focused. You're going to focus on doing very strongly. When you focus, you do one thing. When you take a deep breath and hold it, the R to R becomes almost the same. There is no variability. Heart rate variability decreases. Why did it decrease? Because you focused, because you are now in rhythm with your heart. What caused this? Your own breathing. You inhaled, you held your breath tightly. Your R, repetition, is now becoming a close monitoring. Tough game. We're going to do what needs to be done. We're not going to compromise, do what needs to be done. So we're saying when the RR interval is well synchronized, the distance from one ventricular contraction to another is very fixed, very well regulated. This means that we are focused on a task. And sometimes you might even be stressed. Being perfectly regulated without variability, you have more tension, more physical stress, but it's necessary for that function. What are we going to talk about now? You have a group of people doing something, a choir, synchronized swimming, a classroom. And I'm going to measure some people's heart rate at various times, and suddenly I measure the heart rate. Oh, and this RMSSD is as follows. Or to R has a small distance. If I take this R to R plus the other R to R, we are 2. I divide the distance by 2 and take the square root of that. It gives a small value, which means more or less the variation of each pulse from one to the other. So the frequency is the variation. If this variation is very low, it's because the pulses are well synchronized one by one. I don't need to count a minute to know if there is variability. No, I count them one by one. This RMSSD is one by one. Jackson, why are you talking about such complicated things? I'm trying to explain the mechanism to you. The mechanism of when you activate the sympathetic nervous system and when you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, when you deactivate the vagal nerve and when you deactivate it. So when you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, you're actually relaxing, you're increasing heart rate variability. You're in a Zen state, you're vagal, activated the vagus nerve, you're vagal, you're calm, you're fine, great for sleeping, great for relaxing, great for a good day. The beach, a good vacation, a nice peaceful spot, but sometimes when you're doing things you have to focus. So you breathe deeply, for example, and it starts to synchronize. It's amazing. The moment you're breathing, it starts to synchronize. But I'm talking about a group of people in a specific task. And in that specific task, the heartbeats of those people synchronize. The breathing synchronizes and the heartbeat synchronizes. There's also this decrease in heart rate variability. The frequency doesn't vary as much, and the variation between pulses doesn't go as far either. This means this group has entered a state of flux. It means this group is a self. And here begins a very cool, very beautiful process to see. At that moment, when you're in a group, whether it's a choir, a synchronized swimming team, or I don't know, a football team, you've entered into that synchronicity. You simply feel like you're part of the team. You feel like you are the choir, you're walking with, I don't know, 20 or 30 people, those processions, which I find incredibly beautiful. 4 or 5 hours of walking. Suddenly you're walking, and after an hour you feel it's the rhythm, it's the walk. It feels like that step, almost like marching that step. And suddenly you feel that it is that Jiwasa. You have now ceased to be an isolated self and have become part of a whole self. Jiwasa. And that's where the process of learning and teaching comes in. Because at that moment, this Jivasa, which is occurring, this collective that becomes one person, becomes one individual, becomes a pronoun. Right now, you have a synchronicity. And if you have humility, you teach and you learn. Jackson, how am I going to teach and learn? How am I going to teach and learn? It's simple. When you have those flocks flying, quail flying over there, which look like swallows, but their flight is prettier, or a school of fish, you can notice that the flock goes this way and that, and they change, and the leader changes. The leader who is on this side, who is suddenly the leader here at the tip, suddenly he changes sides and it's someone else. Now, the leader depends on the moment. It's more or less like that. Freedom is real, leadership is fake, because leadership is situational. So at a certain point, if you're the teacher or if you're the host of these 3 or 4 people who are in your house and you've entered into a process of divasa, if you've entered into a process of divasa, what happens is that the people are together with you, cooking, cleaning, walking, doing things, but as one person, a single entity. Nobody is doing one thing and another disconnected. It's all kind of together. They may even be different things, but all together, all connected, all in the same doing. Within the same being. It ceased to be an individual and became a group. That's so beautiful. And at that moment, if you have greater knowledge, you begin to pass it on. And if you're a teacher, you begin to pass on certain things to the students, but you don't pass them on as the permanent leader. You simply say something and you're done. Done. So it's the collective self. You say something and you realize how that child, that other being, is opening up to knowledge. Because look, that other being is protected, that other being is fed, that other being has freedom of expression. So the policy is right, it's in the right phase, it's in your home. And the policy is right when that other being begins to blossom and open up with their DNA to new learning. You are learning how that being is opening up, and you learn about that openness and you say, my goodness, how that child or that one or that person, that one. People learn differently, they see concepts in a different way than I do, and you see that you arrive at the same point. You say, wow, how beautiful, how good it is to learn with learning even. And then you, who thought you were teaching, realize that you are learning by teaching together, because in Divasa there is no leader. The leader, the boss, is just pretend. Freedom is what matters, and fluency is very beautiful. So this is important in today's live stream. In Divasa you learn and teach within a collective self. But you have to be very humble because there is no permanent leader, no permanent boss. Today, in our society, which is colonial, you put in a position for 4 years, the mayor is permanent, the city councillor is permanent, the president is permanent, you understand? The church leader is permanent, the leader of the men, you understand? You always put those guys in place permanently, and they stay there, and then corruption happens, man. Here in leadership, in our ancestral knowledge, when you enter a collective, the leadership changes according to the moment and according to what is being done. And there isn't one person who commands everyone. There is someone who commands now in this particular action. So it becomes a group adapted to a collective. Fantastic. But let's go back again. You are a host, and two things will be done in your home. In the decoration of your home, we are talking about the food and the beliefs within your home, the rules and guidelines that you are establishing. That's what honors you. And the choreography, the movement that people make, again, got it? Proprioception and interoception. Then you take the group. Hold on, same thing. The group can do a choreography. The group is in the environment, and the group perceives the environment, and everyone perceives the environment in the same way. There's a problem there, and it's very serious. Everyone perceives the environment, but suddenly some are like this. They're out of sync. You lost, because the divorce will occur with the information that is common to everyone. If I have access to a different piece of information that the other person doesn't have, belonging changes. The sense of belonging doesn't happen. That's one of the reasons why, even in the decoration I'm doing for an apartment we're going to live in Genvillo, for part of the time, in some places we won't want people to use their cell phones, for example, because it's a somewhat sacred place, a place of belonging with the individuals who are there. It's a place where you will be what you perceive. So we're going to create a beautiful space, a way of decorating, of arranging things so that the person feels big enough and protected. To feel protected and to have the freedom to express oneself within those resources, within that framework, within that environment. But cell phones on social media are really not welcome. But there's a little room with internet access where you can go and do that. And you go there and stay separate to do that kind of thing. Why? Because it's important for us to take this human, this organic being, this living being in body and feel other people acting together with you. And when you enter that divas, the point is not to blindly obey this group. And it's a living coordination. You at some point in this group, you realize you were a leader, but it's over. You're not anymore. And then you see that leadership is constantly changing, and each person within their area of expertise takes on leadership roles in the group. And then you see that leadership also involves, it's more than the attention and intention of an individual or a leader. It's about the group. And sometimes leadership passes to another animal, a dog or an ox or something else. With a bird it calls, it comes. Because if it's synchronized within that group, these rivalries occur in different species. And then you see a community, a sense of belonging, a being greater than these groups collectively together, a feeling of protection. The group will protect you. You have that feeling. It's clear. And if someone in the group is having a problem, basically your arm will already be there. They're protecting, helping. So that's the path we're talking about. That's the thing. So what happens? The group moves forward, but the leadership is qualified. Freedom is real. The leadership is temporary. That's how we emerge from the group. I have several friends and active teachers, instructors who maintain a system where the leader keeps it fixed and fixed and fixed. When the group opens up to these divas, which is learning and teaching at the same time, with a fixed leader, this modulation in heart rate won't occur. This variability in heart rate won't close nicely. It won't be synchronized because there's a rigidity in leadership. When there's a rigidity in leadership, there's no freedom of expression for the group because someone says this is right and this is wrong. I once told you, A dictator is born when he separates things. This is right and wrong. That is a dictator. When he clearly defines what is right and what is wrong, things fluctuate between right and wrong, and depending on the spaces, things change and synchronize. For the good of the group, when the leader comes, is that it? There's rigidity. If there's rigidity, the group doesn't adapt properly to the means, the questions, and the ideas that arise within it. So, this learning and teaching within the collective self is about having the humility to know that now I'm in leadership, but now I'm not anymore, or I'm just the host. I'm here to have a policy of helping and defending each and every citizen, to defend the citizen, to nourish the citizen, to protect this living cell, this citizen, so that they can express themselves with freedom of expression. Sometimes we talk so much about freedom of expression and it becomes nonsense that nowadays freedom of expression is being able to lie and leverage what you lie about to gain popularity, likes, retweets. No, freedom of expression is you, your DNA expressing itself with body movements. It can be with words too, it can be, but mostly time is about bodily movements. That's freedom of expression. And when you have Jiwasa, each individual is liberated with freedom of expression in that environment, in that state, in that way of acting, in that attitude, in that doing. Because Hivasa always occurs in an embodied action, in music being listened to, in a goal being achieved, where everyone is focused on something and it happens in synchronicity and everyone becomes one body. And that's where the humility comes in, noticing that now I'm the leader, now I'm not. No, now I'm responsible for defending everyone so that this continues. Now it's about marking. Here's a good example in the classroom, and I'll leave you with this as a small final example. I'm in the classroom, my students are at the front, and suddenly I'm going to explain something very important. So what do I try to do with the class? I want to synchronize everyone. Okay, everyone, something important. Look closely, consider this concept. Did you notice? I breathe, I hold my breath, I try to synchronize the classroom's breathing. Basically, I'm going to be the conductor of the breathing process. If I synchronize my breathing with the classrooms or groups, I prepare the group for understanding the complex concept. And sometimes this complex concept that I try to convey, I haven't conveyed with much certainty. And sometimes Carlos, Manuel, Claudia, Maria, someone stands up and says, that's it, that's it. Because in this synchronicity, we are one. And the concept gets across and can be better expressed by this or that person in the group. And sometimes what I conveyed isn't well understood, but a member of the group shows it in a different way, with a different way of speaking, with a different drawing, and the learning happens, and you see, look, you understand, but understanding it in a completely different way than I explained it. But did you understand? Because there was a synchronicity, there was something strong, a union that made the group one, a Jiwasa, a religare, we are one, we are together, learning, teaching, living. That's what I wanted to leave you with this week. Next week, I'll try to delve into the mechanism of breathing and heartbeat, to go deeper into it so you can understand this whole thing without division. How the mind comes from and emanates from these beautiful and wonderful things that are the human body itself. A big hug. See you next Wednesday. Goodbye.